JT Wistrcill of Locked On Utes. Clemson has been in talks with the SEC, the Big Ten. I think we're overvaluing them in those two conferences. I think we are overvaluing, and here's the reason why, Balloons. Here's the reason why.
Balloons, that's why.
Look at Miami, okay? In 2003, they are where Clemson is today, where everybody looks at them and says, that's the program. Like, if you're out of the ACC, if you're going to go to expansion, that's the program. Today, Miami could end up with the Big 12 because they just didn't have the brand power that everybody expected. They sucked for a little bit. For Clemson, 15 years ago, they were making less athletic revenue than Bowling Green in football. Their revenue was lower than Bowling Green because they weren't very good and no one cared. And South Carolina was carrying the torch. If they are bad for 5 years at football, for 10 years at football, they're not going to be a valuable commodity like a Florida State, a Texas, an Alabama, an LSU. Those are schools that if they suck, they still make a whole lot of money. Clemson doesn't. Brett McMurphy's brought up the idea of Clemson in the Big 12. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think anybody who adds Clemson is making a mistake because the second they suck, they're not going to be valuable anymore.
Okay, I'll disagree with you there. I think they would add a lot of value to the Big 12 because I think they have the potential, as we've seen.
Yeah, to the Big 12, sure. I'm saying that I just think they're being so overvalued right now.
Yes, I think in many ways, the recent Clemson success hasn't been fantastic. And I'm curious how good they're going to be this year. That's kind of where I'm sitting at, where I'm like, I think I've seen them in the top 10 a lot. Like, can I see it with Cade Klubnik first? And I'll also say this about Clemson. I think these are two different discussions, right? You're talking about their value for Big Ten and SEC. And I mean, I understand that, but also in some ways, I'd rather have them than UCLA. So that's where we can do that whole brand discussion thing of that nature. But let's talk about the Clemson team we're going to see this coming fall. I will say I think they might be a little overvalued because I see them in the top 10. This comes to us from Athlon Sports. They have been an AP preseason top 10 team the past 3 years, but finished no higher than 13th in the final poll during that span. And Cade Klubnik's back yet again, who also in that same Athlon piece, he finished 80th in QBR. So I got a lot of concern still with Clemson. I know that defense can be really good, but offensively still feels like they need a few things to click. And I will also say this. If Dabo doesn't get with the transfer portal, I'm not saying you need to bring in an entire new unit somewhere, but Utah's done a really good job of plugging in bits for when guys depart. I think you need to utilize some of that. And if Clemson doesn't get with some of those times, maybe they do fall all the way down to where you're talking about, where they're not appealing to the Big Ten, the SEC. But to me, when you have the potential to win big there and at the highest level and carry that high ranking next to your school's name, I still think they carry value to be added to a conference.
For an SEC, you bring in Clemson, and then they stay. I mean, for me, what separates Clemson from Mississippi State if Clemson has 5 bad years? And the question really poses itself because South Carolina is in your state. I don't understand. People keep saying, oh, there's no way Clemson goes to the Big 12. I would love to have them in the Big 12. That rocks. That's good. It's same reason I'd love to have Miami. I don't think Miami is a true power in college football like an LSU or even an Auburn who is up there. Clemson's had really good, like Jeff Fuller has put together the EADA numbers the last 6 years. They've been great. Looking back 20 years, Clemson's kind of an afterthought because when they are bad, nobody really pays to see them. They don't generate the same revenue. It's not good. If you're the Big 12 conference, I want to shift it to Miami. If you're Utah, you like Miami, you like Clemson, but I don't think that you like. I don't know if I get it. I don't know if I get Clemson or Miami to the SEC or Clemson or Miami to the Big 10. Because again, in a year where in a 5-year stretch where Clemson's bad, what separates them from a good Utah team?
I think that's fair, but also say this about Clemson. You talked about when they were bad, people didn't pay them as much attention. But they have won those recent national championships, and that does still carry value for them as a big brand. That's something that is going to be sustained and maintained is when you look back and say, hey, they've won recent national championships here. And I think Dabo's still going to be there for a bit. I expect them to remain. And even though they haven't been great, they've still been inside a top 20 team like that. I do not think they belong with the brands that you listed up there. LSU, even in Auburn, I think it's fair to throw in there, right? But I do think because they've won those recent national championships, I just have a hard hard time seeing them falling all the way back. Like each year, I expect Clemson to be ranked inside the top 20 still, even when they have a disappointment. And as I said, I don't think they should be ranked inside the top 10 going into this year. I still think they will continue to be good. And I think they'll have a chance because of that winning tradition and the ability of when you get the right people in there to win big. I think they would still add value to a Big Ten, to an SEC, because they have that history of being better than the likes of Mississippi State. And yes, Drake, you're right. Maybe it wouldn't work out for them when they enter that conference, but it's gone really well for them overall when they have broken through, won some national championships, made it to the playoff, had some big performances. And I know Kate Klubnik didn't work out, but they still got a strong history of quarterbacks and other elite players that I think they can bounce back in some other years and add some recruits. So I'm banking on that recent tradition to keep them relevant, even if they did navigate to a new conference.
I think it's funny that in the Clemson conversation, they really sit. I don't know if irrelevant is the right word, but they have made less money in the last 20 years, revenue-wise, than Indiana, than Duke, than Virginia, than Minnesota, who Louisville and Kansas are above them. You just think, oh, that's not good. Again, the 20-year sample size for Clemson is not great. In the 5-year sample size for Clemson, or even 6-year sample size for what they've done, there are still schools that you're like, oh, I wonder, like, why isn't Clemson making as much as Indiana or UCLA or Kansas? It's just the question. It's the big question mark for me. Do I want Clemson in the Big 12? Yeah, I do. I wouldn't mind that at all. However, do I think that they carry enough weight that the ACC should be swayed by their decisions and schools should be swayed by their decisions? I don't. And you mentioned this kind of off the top of the show about who the Big 12 should add. There are the NC States, the Louisvilles, the Pitts, even maybe a Miami that I think would become valuable commodities in the Big 12 conference. I think moving forward, you turn your attention to them, less so than a Clemson, understanding they go to the Big 10 or the SEC, but also understanding that those conferences might one day regret that decision. Coming up, JT, let's talk, would Utah ever leave the Big 12 conference? Because everybody loves to say that's going to be the case. Here on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is your number one place to go place a bet. I love sports. I love them. I don't want them to stop. Playoffs winded down. We're stuck with baseball now. Baseball's fine. I work in baseball. It's all right. But there aren't as many sports going on. So what do? I go to FanDuel and I put a little money on baseball. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. Head over to FanDuel.com/locked on. Start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. You go in, you say, I think the Texas Rangers are going to win today. Or maybe even smarter, I think the Oakland Athletics are going to lose today. And then what you do is you open up the app, dream up bets anytime that you're in the mood. All customers right now, FanDuel.com/locked on to start making the most of your summer with boost or bonuses daily. FanDuel.com/locked on is where you go. It's FanDuel.com/locked on.